To understand our world, we must look through the lens of why.
Hey everyone, welcome back to WhyLens. You already know the drill around here. We don't just scratch the surface, we peel it back. And today, in this explainer of the hijacked mind, we're diving into a topic that honestly feels a bit like sci-fi, but it is 100% real. We're looking at the dark, often uncomfortable realities of our own unconscious habits. We all love to think we're fully in the driver's seat, right? That we're making these conscious, deliberate choices every second of the day. But the scientific literature paints a completely different, almost cyberpunk reality. We're talking about a reality where our most sophisticated brain functions are quietly, but entirely, overridden by ancient, primitive reptilian circuitry. I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine waking up, walking into your kitchen, and finding empty wrappers everywhere. Maybe some half-eaten, totally bizarre food combinations on the counter. And then the absolute most terrifying part. You notice the lingering taste of dishwashing liquid or soap in your mouth, and you have absolutely zero memory of doing any of this. It sounds like the plot of a weird psychological horror movie, doesn't it? But for some people, there is no script. This is a nightly medical reality. So let's dive into exactly what's going on here. The source material from the Frontiers in Psychiatry journal details a recognized condition known as sleep-related eating disorder, or SRED. It's technically classified as a non-REM parasomnia. In plain English, that basically means that during their main sleep period, patients experience recurrent, totally involuntary episodes of eating and drinking. And here is the real kicker. They suffer from complete amnesia regarding these events. Their bodies literally get up, navigate their environments, and consume things entirely on autopilot, completely bypassing any conscious awareness. When you actually look at the documented symptoms, the brain's chaotic nature on autopilot goes from weird to downright dangerous. We aren't just talking about sleepwalking to the fridge for a slice of leftover pizza here. The literature describes patients consuming strange, highly unusual foods and even inedible or toxic compounds. One patient report highlighted a disorganized, mindless consumption of easily accessible stuff like milk, candies, fruits, and leftovers, all just mashed together. It's almost as if a chaotic, unconscious chef takes over your brain, whipping up a midnight snack of leftover spaghetti mixed with window cleaner. And obviously, this isn't just terrifying, it leads to a massive risk of sleep-related injuries, severe weight gain, and serious metabolic syndrome. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, well, that's when you're asleep. My waking brain is totally different. Actually, scratch that. The transition from awake to asleep is not the only time our autopilot takes the wheel. A truly fascinating study by Nathan Azrin on habit reversal looked at daytime behaviors, and it points out something wild. A movement can blend into normal movements so gradually that it completely escapes our personal and social awareness. These are behaviors that start off as infrequent, but totally normal reactions, and then they slowly morph, basically flying right under our conscious radar entirely. This is exactly how extreme nervous tics develop. We're talking about severe stuff, extreme head and forward shoulder jerks, constant tongue pushing that literally damages the gums, destructive eyelash picking, and severe fingernail biting. You see, these always start with a trigger. Maybe it's physical trauma, or maybe it's just psychological stress. But then they persist. They are performed so often that they solidify into strongly established habits. Your muscles actually adapt, making it physically difficult to consciously stop the movement. I mean, think about it. Have you ever caught yourself biting your nails and realized you didn't even know you started? In that moment, your conscious, waking mind is essentially locked out of the control room. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the anatomy of this hijack. Neuroscience shows us there's this epic battle between two different brain regions. On one side, we have the prefrontal cortex. This is your system two. It handles your conscious, deliberate thinking, complex calculations, and learning new things. But on the other side, buried deep within the brain, is the basal ganglia, specifically a part called the putamen. Think of this as your primitive reptilian autopilot. Whenever you learn a new behavior, that prefrontal cortex is working overtime. But as you repeat it, your brain literally rewires itself to save energy. The prefrontal cortex powers down, and that primitive basal ganglia takes over the steering wheel completely. And to prove just how isolated this primitive system really is, the research points to a fascinating, though tragic, human patient known as Eugene. Eugene suffered from severe brain damage that completely wiped out his ability to form any new conscious memories. To give you an idea, he would be paralyzed by indecision over something as simple as what to eat for breakfast. Yet amazingly, he could seamlessly navigate the complex layout of his home on total autopilot. Because his basal ganglia was still intact, he was incredibly still able to learn brand new habits. He could navigate his home and perform these complex routines, which proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that our habits live entirely separate from our conscious memory. Which brings us to this incredibly chilling quote from MIT neuroscientist Professor Anne Graybiel. She notes that once a behavior is handed off to that primitive striatum in the basal ganglia, even if you really don't want to, it's hard to not do. Think about how crazy that is. We essentially lose our veto power. The habit just executes itself automatically, regardless of what our present conscious desires actually are. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact schematic of our autopilot. Charles Duhigg's model, which is widely used in behavioral science, boils this massive, complex neurological hijack down into a remarkably simple, relentless cycle. It's called the habit loop. Let's break down the actual architecture of this autopilot system. It always requires 3 specific steps. First step is the trigger or cue. This is the sensory signal that rings the bell and tells your basal ganglia to fire up. Second is the routine. This is the behavior itself, whether it's making a cup of tea, biting your nails, or walking to the fridge while fast asleep. And third is the reward. This is the neurological payoff. It's the dopamine hit that tells your brain, oh yeah, this loop is totally worth remembering. Let's wire it deeper. What is so wild about this reptilian programming is how incredibly universal it is. The source material outlines some famous experiments that prove this happens across entirely different species, which is just amazing to consider. On one hand, we have the classic rat tea maze experiment, where a simple click sound acts as the cue for the rat to run a maze and find chocolate. On the other hand, we have a monkey named Julio. Julio sees a specific shape on a screen as his cue, pulls a lever as his routine, and gets a squirt of blackberry juice as his reward. It is literally the exact same mechanical loop governing the rat, the monkey, and us. And when researchers map brain activity during this exact loop, the scans reveal something absolutely incredible. There is this massive spike in brain activity right at the beginning, when the cue is heard. And then there is another huge spike at the very end, when the reward is found. But during the middle, during the routine itself, the brain activity literally drops off a cliff. While the actual behavior is happening, the conscious brain basically stops thinking entirely. It is quite literally asleep at the wheel. Now, what's really interesting about this is the plot twist that happens once a habit is fully embedded. In the monkey experiment, after Julio learned his loop perfectly, his brain activity completely changed. The big spike of neurological pleasure didn't happen when he actually got the juice anymore. The spike happened the second he saw the cue on the screen. His brain was literally anticipating the reward before it even arrived. And this anticipation creates something insanely powerful and, honestly, pretty dangerous: a craving. As the research explicitly states, what draws us to act isn't actually the sensation we receive from the reward itself. It's the desperate need to alleviate the craving for that reward. Our primitive brains aren't happily chasing a reward for joy. They are frantically trying to eliminate that really uncomfortable, nagging neurological itch of a craving. We can sit here and laugh at a monkey frantically mashing a keyboard for a drop of juice, but come on. How different is that from us frantically pulling down to refresh our notifications at 2 a.m., or feeling completely unable to function until we've had that exact first cup of morning coffee, or unknowingly injecting filler words into every single sentence we speak? Our underlying feelings, whether it's hunger, fear, exhaustion, or just feeling a little antsy, they drive these behaviors. And here's a wild reality check. Tech companies literally build their products specifically to hijack these exact primal cravings. And it actually gets even darker. Professor Wendy Wood from the behavioral science literature points out that the true test of a fully established habit is something called insensitivity to reward. This is the terrifying gold standard for identifying a true habit. It means you just keep executing the routine even when the reward doesn't bring you any pleasure anymore, or even if the reward is removed entirely. The habit functions completely on autopilot whether you actually want the outcome or not. It just becomes this endless, self-sustaining loop. So this brings us to a really uncomfortable summary laid out in this analysis. We walk around assuming we're these highly rational agents making conscious, well-thought-out choices. But when you look at how deeply embedded these loops are, from minor annoying tics to literally sleepwalking and eating inedible objects, we are forced to confront the reality of our day-to-day behaviors. So much of what we do every single day has become completely routine, governed by ancient biology that we are not actively controlling. It's definitely a lot to process, isn't it? It really forces us to stop and ask, are the choices you make every single day actually yours? Or is your basal ganglia just quietly in the background pulling all the strings? If you want to keep dissecting these uncomfortable truths about human psychology, make sure you hit that subscribe button to the WhyLens channel right now. We are going to keep exploring all the hidden forces that drive our reality. So until next time, stay curious and, hey, pay close attention to your autopilot.